To call to order tonight the Hampstead Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Today is Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025. Could we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Sharon Callahan.
Here.
Lou Conyer.
Here.
Charlie Overmeyer.
Here.
Deborah Painter.
Here.
And Barb Yeager.
The public is advised that members of the Hampstead Town Council may be present and in attendance at this meeting. All persons are reminded that this session is being recorded on tape as required by law for the preservation of records and are asked when providing comment to give their name and address. All persons in attendance are requested to print their name and address and affiliation on the sign-in sheet. First on the agenda is minutes approval of the June 25th, 2025 regular commission meeting. May we have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So approved. Next on the agenda, zoning administrator update.
Just a few things. First, with the water system project, we're very close to breaking ground with pipeline construction. Right now, in the process of getting all the grading permits, utility permits. They're just about done getting all the permits. So in the next week or so, you will see silt fence going up along Shiloh Road, opposite Hampstead Elementary. That's where they're going to start. And we're hoping by the second week in August, they're starting to tear up the road. They're hoping to be out of there and done with Shiloh by the time school starts. It's going to be a tough task.
Starting in August and
Yeah.
finishing in August. Wow.
Yeah, it's Mid-Atlantic Utilities who, when they've always done work for us, they are the best. And so that's where that stands. The bid for the water treatment plant construction, it's out. We're awarding 2 contracts for that, one to do North Carroll Farms and Shiloh facilities, and another contract to do the dairy and the Hampstead Valley facilities. Bids will be opened as of right now on August the 4th. That is questionable because we keep getting a lot more questions about the bids. The bids are legitimately, or the paperwork for the bids are legitimately over 1,000 pages each contract.
Wow.
So it's a lot to go through. Chances are we're going to have to extend it to answer all the questions and get the addendums done and get approved. All the addendums have to be approved by MDE before we can release them to the people bidding on the job. So that's going to probably hold us back a week or so. We're having a town hall meeting here next Thursday, July 31st at 6:30 in the evening, basically to go over what the plan is, and just anyone that wants to know exactly what's in store for the next 2 years in town. We're just being open and transparent and saying, here's what we're doing, here's the approximate timeline. The pipeline, the longest it will take is 1 year. I don't anticipate it taking more than 7 or 8 months. That will be that'll cause the biggest headaches for people around town. Once we get to the water treatment plants, they're basically 2 of them are out of sight. It won't be anything. The one along Shiloh won't be bad, and then there's one that'll go into Chief Sites Park down on Lower Beckleyville. But they will not be any sort of traffic headache like the pipelines will be for a little bit. Speaking of town hall meetings, last night we had the town hall meeting for the Robertsfield Stormwater Management Pond. This room was pretty full. There was just a couple empty seats. Claire Hurt from the county came over and gave a very nice presentation. Went in depth into the project, the why, the where, what we're going to do. There were some questions afterwards, and Claire and Janet from land management took some notes. They would go back, talk to the design, and see if possibly we could make some changes to the design to accommodate what the residents were requesting. Once we get the answers, we'll make sure that everyone is aware of that. So I traded some emails with the engineer for Tractor Supply. So he's really thinking that they're going to get stormwater management concept approval this week.
Oh, my.
So if so, they will be back here in August for our approval of their concept plan. Last thing, probably most of you are aware, but just to put it out there, we have 3 new businesses coming to town. Restaurants. So we have the Hibiscus Tree, which is down at Roberts Field, which is where C&R Pub was. They're from what I understand, a Szechuan sushi place. Then we have up where the old Hampstead Diner was, Little G's Diner. They have their ribbon cutting on Saturday, and then they will be open after that. You guys are familiar with them. They were here for their sign approval. And then Roganart, European bakery, bistro, and cafe, correct? You can ask him all about when they're opening when we get to his sign. So, yeah, it's exciting to have the new businesses coming. And I can firsthand say that Little G's Diner and their soft opening did not disappoint. It was very good food. So, looking forward to all 3. That's it.
That's it? Okay, well, that's exciting. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, approval of a sign application for Roganart, 903 South Main Street, Suite F, exterior and window signage. That must be you. Welcome. Come forward, and if you would, please state your name and address.
Andy Budimirovich, I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Roganart.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You didn't bring any samples.
I asked what I should bring, and it was told nothing. So that's the idea.
Somebody said, don't you dare ask that question. I said, well, yes, I am. Because I checked you out on the internet, and it's a pretty cool place. Okay. Have you all had a chance to review?
Yeah. As far as the signage, it all fits within the code requirements. The window signage, the requirement that it's under 33%, and this is well under 33%. So the Roganart sign basically is going on the same track that the Snickerdoodle sign was on before. So
Any questions, anyone?
So is this the first and only, or is this one of many?
One of many. This would be number, when we open it, number 10, I believe.
Oh,
We have 6 in Maryland right now, 1 in Virginia, second one is going to open up soon in Virginia, and 2 in Chicago.
Okay.
That's a big leap from Maryland,
Yeah.
Virginia to Chicago.
Yeah, I think the owners wanted to explore that market. They were interested about that. So.
What's the opening date, do you know?
Because it's a second generation space, they are moving quickly, and I'm actually, after this, I'm going to go check it out myself. But we're aiming for end of August, I believe.
any other questions? If there are no other questions, then I need a motion, please, for an approval of the signage for Roganart at 903 South Main Street, Suite F, Hampstead.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so approved, and welcome.
Welcome, thanks.
Very exciting.
So I'll send the sign permit over to that email chain that's got everybody in it, and so you'll have it tomorrow sometime. All right. Thanks.
Okay, next on the agenda, discussion of the 2024 Carroll County Water Resources Element Draft.
So last month, I gave you guys a couple handouts, basically, with information about the water resources element draft and how it pertains pretty much to the Hampstead water and sewer systems. And I told you if you could, please review. And this month, we would have Mrs. Brenda Denny back, who put this whole plan together, of which she gave me the entire draft today. So this is it. I'm only on page 3 right now.
I like ours better.
So she's gonna explain this, the water resources element, the update that's going on, and she has a slideshow presentation for you all. Yep. She's also a Hampstead resident.
Just for the record, please, would you state your name and address?
My work address?
Yeah.
Or,
Mhm.
Brenda Denny. I work for Carroll County Planning and Land Management at 225 North Center Street in Westminster.
Thank
Only
you.
worked there for 32 years, why should I know that?
You don't need to know that, right? Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for having me. I have to first start by saying I'm just not sure there's any way to make this exciting. So bear with me, but I thought at least if you had something to look at that might be more interesting than just hearing me talk. And what Jim gave you last month is just a summary, like a very broad overview, because that is the document. But 300 pages is challenging. A lot of technical information and so anyway, I just wanted to give you the overview of what it's all about before we move to the next step. So the purpose of this plan is just to make sure that all of the water resources, which is water, wastewater, stormwater, that all of that is considered, any opportunities or challenges that are presented by those resources are considered when you're looking at plan growth in your comprehensive plan, because it affects what you can do. So obviously, this information is connected to the comprehensive plan in that you have to have water available, you have to have wastewater available. That's like you do or you don't when you have plan growth. Stormwater is much more wishy-washy, easier to accommodate. And then, of course, there's recommendations in here that affect your plan. It is part of your plan, even though it's a separate document. But it's because it has all this technical information that it requires. You don't want that to be a chapter in your comprehensive plan. So ultimately, today, we're talking about just approving the draft to go to 60-day review, which is a state requirement for state agencies to look at it. But ultimately, the planning commission would need to approve a draft that would go to the council with a recommendation for adoption. So that's the end goal for you guys. So it was first done in 2010 based on legislation that was adopted in 2006. It was a 3-year process just to get to the 2010 document. And since then, it had drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater were all addressed as part of that plan. And since then, a whole lot has happened that has changed. So between 2010 and 2022, when the state put out new guidance on this document, you've probably heard all kinds of stuff about the bay and the pollution diet and everything else. We have all these requirements now that were set by EPA that we have to meet to try to get Bay back to meeting water quality standards. So that wasn't in place when we did the plan in 2010. So that's a huge change and a complete rewrite of that section of this plan. Climate change considerations were something that were added to the guidance document. And then also looking at growth and development impacts through an equity lens, which we don't have as big of issues, especially in Hampstead, as we do in some other areas. So it's not like a huge thing that had to be addressed for us here. So couple things that are important to know about how this was done. It's based on the water and wastewater capacity, projected capacity, and projected demand, and using methodology that MDE, Maryland Department of Environment, told us we had to do it this way. And it's based on, it says 2024 plan, even though we're in 2025. But that's because the data is all based on service areas from the 2023 water and sewer master plan, and the zoning that was in place in 2022 when the estimates for buildable land were done. So if we had to pick a point in time, because we're doing this for 9 jurisdictions, which means 18 systems, and if we had to change something every time anything changed, this document would never be done. So instead, what we've done is incorporated recommendations or action items where appropriate, if something significant has changed since those estimates are done. For example, Union Ridge amended their plan and took a whole lot of area out of their growth area. So rather than redoing the numbers, we just have recommendations in there for those numbers to be reevaluated and then prioritize the action items accordingly based on the new information. And then the water and sewer service areas that are covered in terms of like what's built out for Hampstead. For this plan, it's all the service areas in the water and sewer plan. MDE recognizes the existing, the priority, and future, and the priority and the future, and then Carroll County municipalities have added the long range category, which isn't something MDE asked for, but we put it in so that we can plan for longer range. So everything that's in any of those areas is what's considered the area for build out for this plan. So let's look at drinking water. So based on, how the numbers are done, the upshot is, except for Freedom, pretty much every municipality needs more water in order to meet the demand that build out of the water service area. However, so we have if you look at the next table, you can see right here, Freedom's the only one that has plenty of water to build out demand. But we have traffic lights, we've got green is good to go, yellow need water, but these are limitations can be overcome a little more easily. And then red, sorry for Union Bridge and New Windsor, but they have some significant issues to overcome in order to be able to do what they need to do to serve that
So-
water demand.
Do you have in there anything that tells more about the buildable land index so they have a better idea of exactly how dense that is? Or,
What do you mean by dense?
well, basically how with the buildable land index that I'm thinking of, basically it takes every property in town that, is it just town or is it growth area also?
It's the entire county, including the municipalities.
Okay, but for the Hampstead number, that's just the town limits?
It's whatever is in your water and sewer service area.
Service area, okay. So it's a planning number.
This entire thing is planning numbers only.
Yeah. So my point is, don't be concerned.
And so, so this deficit then is based off of the projected numbers, and what you're saying is a projection of what our deficit is if we were to realize those growth numbers.
And based on the way MDE told us we had to come up with the estimates, and I will explain that.
Thank you.
But I know what Jim's point is going to be.
Yes.
So, but if you, I'll get to that in a second, but if you look at this, the ones that are yellow, they're the ones, if we don't add any more water than what we've got, obviously, more water is going to be needed. But for everything in yellow there, just about all of them can overcome it with drilling additional wells, so finding additional water sources. In Manchester, for example, their limitation is their pump capacity, not their permitted capacity. If they got a pump that could handle more water, they're golden. They go, green. So there are more easily overcome ways to meet their demand in the yellow. And all of these numbers look huge for a reason. Okay, the water and sewer plan is done differently, but essentially, like, generally looking at it, you're taking, for water, you're looking at the permitted capacity and you're subtracting the demand. How much do you have left after you take the demand out? And that's the number that you're looking at in the plan. With this, so when a system reaches 80% of its capacity, MDE requires that the system develop a capacity management plan. And that kind of says how you expect to continue to provide service for the needs now that you're at that percent of your capacity. The method to do that is the same method we use for this. And one thing it does is it adds 10% to the number for drought demand. That's not the water and sewer plan. Like, we don't generally look at that when we do it. We just look how much is our demand and how much is our capacity. So that inflates the number. Another thing that inflates the number is, for example, Manchester's an easy example because pump capacity is their limiting factor. So what is the most limiting factor that the system has? You know, it could be your highest producing wells out of service. For Manchester, if they didn't have their pump, if they didn't have the problem with pump capacity, they'd be good, but that's what's limiting them. So for Hampstead, we had to figure out which was the highest producing well and subtract that from the capacity. Because MDE is trying to achieve redundant capacity. They want to make sure in any situation, we've always got enough water. So it's a very, very conservative number. So it's not how we do the water and sewer master plan, but it comes out like this because we had to consider those factors. So it's not actually as bad as it looks. And
So drilling a new well potentially would not reduce that number? Because
Mhm.
it
Oh,
would
it
be,
would.
it would,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
let me just, I'll get. There we go.
So basically, it's like worst case scenario, your best well doesn't work and we have a terrible drought.
Yes, that's exactly what they want us to plan for.
Okay.
Mhm.
Just to give you an idea, real quick, I'm sorry, on a local level, so our allocation from MDE is 830 gallons a day. You subtract that 20% that Brenda was referring to, it's down to 664,000 gallons a day. On average right now, we are pumping about 350,000 gallons a day. We do have a capacity management plan that Tom Devilbliss oversees, and he will add in, once the site plan is put into the process here, he will put that into the capacity management plan. So for example, Hans was put in, and if you remember with Hans, was a big water user, 1.6 million gallons a quarter. So he's got Hans in there, he's got Tractor Supply in there, he's added the water usage that we're projecting for Penguin Random House. Everything that has a site plan going on right now is in there, and we were still under that 80%.
So we don't need to start hoarding water in the basement?
No, we
tubs?
do
Okay.
not. That was my
Good
point.
to know.
Well, and I guess that's the other factor that I didn't mention is, so the town knows how much water is used per capita or per household, whatever. But no matter what, the MDE still has us use 250 gallons per day per household and 700 gallons per acre per day for commercial, 800 gallons per day per acre for commercial, industrial. So if you already know that, you know, based on that, maybe it's saying you need 100,000 gallons, but we already know, say, one of these businesses only needs 25,000. So, you know, you've got 75,000 available, but MDE has this, using this larger number. So, I mean, the benefit is you always have water if you plan it that way, but it also makes it look, the numbers look really bad, and like you don't actually have capacity when you do.
Mhm.
So if you look at it this way, just subtracting your permitted water supply, you know, the wells from the demand. So, like I said, the build-out includes the long range in the water and sewer plan. So the middle, the number on the left is the number that was on the other chart. That includes 10% drought demand, your highest well out of service. The middle one includes the long range service area, and you can see it eliminates like 120,000 gallons of deficit right there. And then if you look at it without the long range, because if a water and sewer plan amendment comes to you, or the triennial update, it's not going to be based on long range since that's not an MDE category. You know, when that needs to be certified consistent with your comprehensive plan,
Mhm.
it'd be the number on the far right. But again, that's also very conservative, and if you have a capacity management plan in place, that's what they're gonna be looking at. You know, if you say you have capacity and this looks like you don't. So, it's not the problem it looks like it is. It's just, this is how it comes out when, and we have added, we have language in all the municipal sections and in the section where everything is sort of shown all together to explain that there's these differences in demand and certification of consistency with the comprehensive plan needs to be done for the water and sewer plan. We have these other numbers in, say, use these, not the other numbers, then it shows that, you know, MDE requires these capacity management plans, we don't already have one, so that's how and when the need would be addressed, you know, if MDE would have you do something. This plan is just a planning tool, but it's like, what can we do to address this issue? It's not saying we've got, but this is the end all be all. But it's just showing what it would be using their numbers. And that's why this whole thing is so complicated. So, after looking, so, let me back up a step. So that's kind of like the background on the water, like in terms of the results of when you look at what the capacity and demand are and the results and what the needs are. Then we have two sets of strategies. One says a countywide set of strategies that, so one thing to keep in mind is this is one document that all 9 jurisdictions worked on together and we're all adopting the whole document. For Hampstead, it would be exclusive of the other municipal sections, but like, you don't care what they do. But, so we have a section where we all the municipalities in the county work together and say, all right, here's things that we could do, and the strategies are really simple. Let's sustain what the water source supply we have, develop new when we need it, conserve water, and develop emergency supplies as needed, right? So we have the countywide that everybody says, here's things that we can do, and not commitments, but these are things that we could do. And then the individual, which would be listed in your section specifically, there are things that Hampstead could do to meet your own issues. For everybody, we have some alternatives. So this plan is supposed to look way down the road. And one of the purposes of the plan is, for us, is to show MDE that we have water in order to meet the needs that we project in the future. So one thing that was done, we had a consultant look at the entire county groundwater and surface water sources and like estimate how much water is actually available in the groundwater. Then how much use there could be based on, like if all the what people on well and septic had wells or even new lots. And if all of the systems, the municipal systems developed, and there was plenty of groundwater using that. So the real issue isn't that we don't have water, it's accessing it. So you don't know what's coming down the pipe in the future, so looking very long term, we're also showing MDE that if there was problem, like couldn't use our wells or whatever, we have some other alternatives that are possible, like the reservoirs that existing and planned, surface water intakes like off of streams. For some of the municipalities in the county, they have quarries that they can access water from. Obviously, we pretty much all can access groundwater wells now. How much you get out of it and how much MDE appropriates is a different story. And then lower down on the list, interconnection with other systems, and then there's also indirect potable reuse, which is what Westminster's been pursuing with their pure water Westminster system. And then some of the key things that everybody could do is to diversify their water supply. Freedom, for example, pretty much is just on the reservoir. Well, if something happened at that plant, they don't have water to serve everybody. So diversification for them looks like, let's add some wells to the system too. So if something happened at that water treatment plant, we have other sources. At least with the town, you've got multiple wells. So if something happened with one, you've got others still producing. Investigate water reuse options that can look a number of different ways down the line. Drought management plans, everybody's in the process of developing those. So, no, that's salt management plans, sorry.
Salt management, yes.
Too many plans going on.
I'm going, we are?
But a lot of the municipalities already have drought management plans, but it's here because not all of them do. But it's something good to have since with climate change, drought is projected to be a more common occurrence. Identify emergency supplies, and then shared service agreements are something else we can do to help each other out with water supplies in emergency situations. So for Hampstead specifically, you were very familiar with the PFAS situation and the whole plan for treatment and system-wide centralization, so that's obviously a key action item for the town. Additional wells, industrial water reuse, which has already been implemented at some places. And then, if needed, long range, we've got the regional water supply option. And when we look at wastewater, of course, the county owns the system, but that aside, is serving the town again. The plant has been sort of a capacity issue for years. But, so it's yellow, but there are things that can be done to help overcome that challenge, so that's why it's yellow. And of course, I&I is one of the biggest things almost all the municipalities can do to regain some of their capacity, treatment capacity, because as you eliminate water coming into the system that doesn't belong there, you free up treatment capacity at the plant. And that's a way cheaper option than building new plants or doing expansions or anything like that. So all the towns have programs in place to fix I&I and to continue doing that.
What's I&I? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, it's inflow and infiltration. So the pipes that go, distribution system for the sewer all go to the wastewater treatment plant, and as they go, like if there's a crack in it somewhere, water gets inside and then joins what's already in there, taking up
I
space.
gotcha, okay.
So that's just an example of one way that water gets in that doesn't belong there. So if you can fix, like, put a new pipe in or line it so that it doesn't have water getting in or something, that helps keep that extra flow that doesn't get in. And then part of the bay cleanup, all of the plants that are over 500,000 gallons per day have a cap on nutrients, so nitrogen and phosphorus. So most of the systems in the county, if they would need to look at total phosphorus at some point, but I don't think that's a huge issue for Hampstead because where the plant's not expanded. So if you look at 50,000 gallons, and this is using MD's very conservative method, isn't really that bad. They did one I&I fix near the plant and we gained 50,000 gallons just with that one fix. So the real issue there is just that the plant is not going to expand, so you're kind of stuck at the 900,000 gallons. But so it's yellow, but it's not really a big problem because that's an easy fix. Easy in that it's not as expensive as many other things. And strategies countywide and for the town are, of course, to sustain our existing treatment capacity and develop new if needed. This is countywide, so we could be developing any new. But. And then overall, same, fix the inflow and infiltration, look at water reuse, and not for you, but for New Windsor and Union Bridge, one of them needs a new plant and the other needs to expand it, even to accommodate additional water. So the two are so closely tied. If you don't have enough capacity in you can't treat any more wastewater. You can't supply any more water than the wastewater you can supply. So if your plant is 900,000 gallons, you can't supply more than 900,000 gallons of water because the plant can't treat it, can't accommodate it. So those towns are stuck by their treatment capacity at their plants. So some of the key action items, again, along with the I&I reductions, is a lot of the municipalities we've found through the Water Resource Coordination Council have equipment or contractors that they've been doing stuff with, and we've talked about the idea of sharing some of those resources to help the other municipalities save money and make things more efficient. We have two plants that are under 500,000 gallons, and they are both looking at the potential of upgrading their treatment to the enhanced nutrient. There's 0 water discharge options. I'm not sure how that works, but I know they just don't discharge into the stream. The stuff goes elsewhere by some method other than discharging to the stream. And then the big thing is funding and moving forward with improvements that are put in the water and sewer plants so that you can accommodate what you are projecting. For Hampstead, these are all the things we just talked about. The one thing that's on here that's not on any of the other ones is to continue to mitigate the wastewater treatment discharge temperature. And temperature limits are coming. They've already had one set in Baltimore County, so I'm sure they're going to try to set one here where the plant discharges.
What is the reason for that?
Because the temperature's too high, the trout can't survive.
Which actually ties into the Robertsfield Stormwater Facility.
Yes.
Okay.
The temperature coming out of there is too warm. That's one of the reasons we have to redo that, the pond. So, yeah, it all ties together.
And so pollution isn't limited to just nutrients anymore now, it's going to be temperature too. And then I know the Bureau of Utilities wants to look at evaluating the user rate structure. And the third sort of area of water resources is stormwater. Now, of course, stormwater should be considered when you're looking at land use decisions for your plan, but this is not one that we think we would anticipate being a limiting factor for growth. Anything that's new has to follow the stormwater regulations, and so it addresses their stormwater when it's built. Anything that's existing is addressed under the joint permit that the county and the towns all have for stormwater. So that includes putting in new facilities in county and towns cost share on those projects, and so that's already being addressed. And we already have, our permit requires that we have a plan to say how we're going to meet the water quality requirements. So we would just reference that. We already have an annual report that for the permit that shows the progress that we're making. So we can just reference those things, and we didn't have to reinvent the wheel and come up with all new stuff just for stormwater for this plan. So I just mentioned this. So the strategies for stormwater are to restore water quality. That's what our permit says too, so we have to do that. Enhance our programs, consider it when we're planning land use, and there's a big, huge push with the state now to reduce flooding. That's going to be the next thing, one of the next things we're going to have to be looking at. So, in regard to that, the state is working on amending their stormwater code right now. In fact, we're anticipating that they'll have draft regulations out by the end of this month. And of course, once they make those final, we will all have to go and amend our stormwater code to be consistent with the state. So that's coming, and that they have tried to incorporate some requirements to address flooding. So we have to be able to capture more stormwater and all. Watershed-specific flood management plans is another thing that they are going to be requiring us all to do, at least for watersheds that have identified flooding issues. Maybe all of them, I'm not sure. So that's there. Continue to support the ag preservation program, because by not having development on those properties, we don't have added impervious surfaces that we have to treat. Right now, we don't allow development in the floodplain, and I don't know, if you don't have a property that has a stream on it, then maybe you don't have to worry about this, but if you do, you have to pay extra flood insurance on your home. So by having different things in place, with FEMA, you get rated for the things you have in place, and the higher rating you get, the more discount the property owners in the county get on their flood insurance. So we're going to continue to work towards getting higher and higher levels so that we can keep those flood insurance rates down for our property owners. Continue looking at things that help all of our issues, that's co-benefits, and then always take advantage of funding. For the town, it's pretty much the same things. None of the towns really identified additional things beyond what we're doing countywide. So climate change, I mentioned, is something that got added to the plan, to the guidance document. And climate change for Carroll County specifically, we're looking at warmer temperatures, increased extreme precipitation events, increased flooding. At the same time, we have increased drought. And then all of that, of course, causes additional water quality issues. So, but rather than having just a climate change section, the co-benefits, a lot of the stuff we're doing for stormwater already addresses this. Some of the stuff we're doing for water already addresses climate change. So it's been kind of integrated to the other strategies and actions. So, like I said, these are the same ones I just showed you for stormwater. That's how much they work together. Then there's emerging contaminants. I mentioned PFAS earlier. You got microplastics has been discussed. Pharmaceuticals and personal care products. A lot of medicines get flushed down the toilet, goes to the treatment plant, can't get treated out, so they get discharged into the stream because that's not part of the treatment process currently. At least not for everything. Road salt's been talked about a lot in the last decade. When we get snow in the summer and you put down all that salt, it runs off of stormwater, and salt has been showing up in groundwater wells near where sources are, and so now we have a salt management plan that all of our municipalities and the county are required to do as part of the stormwater permit, and they should all be done by October.
We've been using it for over a year.
I mean, some of the municipalities had them in place for years now. Like Manchester we used them as a template to develop way back. So, and then lithium is another up and coming thing that we anticipate EPA will also set a limit for that, just like they did PFAS. Don't know where that's going to land or what we're going to have to do for that. So these are things that's in here because we want to keep an eye on these things, and where we can reasonably take measures to address something we see coming down the line, then we'll do that. So that's the testing and monitoring, putting a PFAS mitigation plan together, the salt management plan. We had the lead and copper rule that EPA put out a couple of years ago. So the town had to inventory all of your water lines to see where they were lead and copper, and then put together a plan to replace many of those pipes. So that's emerging contaminant, and it's also another expense for the municipalities. Again, we'll be monitoring the lithium because we anticipate drinking water standards. So all this coming down the line, we're all saying, well, maybe we should start allocating funding to address this stuff because we know it's coming. So that's the overview. So for your process, right now, so planning commissions, of course, are where we start with the plan. And right now, all the municipal planning commissions are reviewing. So the next step after you review it would be to, after all the planning commissions are done with it, we send it to the state for 60-day review. So the municipal planning commissions are looking at it now. I'm getting feedback. I have made some changes, like adding the numbers and the explanation about the difference between the water and sewer master plan and the MDE's method for this plan, just so it's clear. Also emphasizes to MDE that it's a problem because we do have in there as a recommendation that we need to coordinate with MDE to make these things match more closely. After we did the 2010 plan, we redid the entire water and sewer plan using the same methodology that was in the WRA. It made sense, right? I mean, they just told us to do this way, so why wouldn't they want the water and sewer plan to be consistent? They sent it back, scratched it, and they just redo it completely again, back the other way. So we want to, this is a good opportunity to highlight that this is a problem. So anyway, so after the municipal planning commission's feedback, I've got from everybody. I've also started working through the county planning commission, which tends to take a little long. So I started this month with the first year review. In August, we'll be talking about water and wastewater. So I'm hoping by October, they're looking at the action items and the strategies. And then they always say, well, what did the town say? So by going to the municipalities first, I'll be able to have feedback incorporated already. And I go to them and say, this is what the town said, and we've already addressed this. And then hopefully in January, if we're lucky, we'll be able to send it out for 60-day review. So I'm compiling any changes I make so that I can send it out to all the planning commissions after it does go to 60-day review, because there may be some changes from what's in there right now. But it's a draft, and it's gonna change again anyway, because the state's gonna send back comments from 60-day review that we might have to address. We're gonna hold a public hearing, and it's gonna be, if you're sitting, it's gonna be a joint public hearing of all 9 planning commissions. We did this in 2010, so we know we can do it, and now we also have the option to do hybrid for people who can't be there in person. Hearing is just to take comments, so without needing that question and answer interaction, it's a lot easier to do a joint hearing for that. So after that hearing, then we're gonna have comments from the hearing, we're gonna have state comments to address, and then there'll be additional changes at that time. And then we'll get to a point where you're like, all right, this is it, and we're gonna recommend it to the council for adoption. But then now, state law's changed since 10 years ago. Now the council also goes through this process. They don't have to do the 60-day review, but they do have to hold a public hearing. And then they can make changes themselves. They could adopt it as is, they could make changes, they could remand it to you, or just plain deny it. All of that used to have to go back to the planning commission and then go back to them again. But now they can just make those changes themselves and then adopt it. So, that's the process. The question is, what would you like to do? Would you like to prove it? Like, are you ready to say, all right, state, this is the draft? You know, what are your comments? That's essentially what we're asking for.
And if there aren't any comments, are you asking basically for their approval to send a draft to the state? Are you asking them for that tonight or at this point?
If you're ready for that, we can do that.
Okay.
If not, we'll wait till next week. But, yeah, so this is just a draft. And we are making some additional changes that I will send out to all the planning commission when it does go to a 60-day review.
Right.
But we know the state's gonna comment. They always do.
What are your comments?
Yeah, I say, is the question on the table, you know, will this commission approve of your methodology and plan to then get together with the other 9 jurisdictions? I wasn't sure what your
No.
request
Yeah.
of us is.
We've already worked with
full
everybody.
draft, yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
that's already
Okay.
been done. And the methodology is set by MD. It is what it is. These numbers are because that's how MD said to do it. All we're asking is, are you okay with us sending the draft to the state agencies for review so we get their comments on the draft?
Jim, how do you see that?
It's up to you guys. I mean, as she said, the numbers are the numbers. So the
Correct,
only
I
thing in there, in
understand
my opinion, that's controversial is that, if we're not gonna change them.
Right.
And we've tried to explain them as best we can, why they are the way they are.
Correct.
And my
Then
guess
are
is,
we being held then to the action, you know, the actions that are recommended? Are those something that we're signing up for and saying we've got to do,
No,
or are
no.
those simply recommendations to get?
It's just
Agreed.
recommendations for things you
Okay.
could do to achieve the strategies.
Not
And I
mandatory.
specifically say that in the beginning, this is not commitments, you know, that's in the text. It's not a commitment, these are just ways you could get.
It's just like the recommendations we made in the Hampstead comprehensive plan. You know, there's the things that we would like to, you know, accomplish or thinking that we could accomplish, but in no ways to just say we're definitely doing this.
So the only other big question I would have is, like, we're going through all this work, you know, funding for the water treatment plants, right? And then there's this list of contaminants, emerging contaminants that we've got to worry about. Are we already going to be able to filter those out and detect, or are we gonna need to go back and retrofit our water treatment plants to address the contaminants that you're listing here?
We're
If the
pretty-
state comes out with regulation,
We're pretty sure the additional contaminants that she discussed, the lithium, the pharmaceuticals, will all be captured by the GAC filters. So,
And it-
yes, we thought of that.
Well, and I think another important thing about the modernization and the centralization that we're doing, that we don't have to treat individual wells anymore in smaller pump houses, that we're centralizing everything into these large water treatment plants, so that, you know, in the future, maybe there's some new contaminant that comes out that we don't know anything about. By combining these wells into one treatment facility, we have the ability to add treatment
More
at that
control.
level instead of at all the individual wells. So that's a perk of a project
So
as
if
well.
there were one of these emerging that treatment did not.
Either it's already gets
address-
treated, or we're gonna have to add another piece of equipment at those 4 locations. Yeah, I mean,
Hopefully not. Hopefully
yeah, I mean,
there
it
could be
is,
something else that comes out in the future.
yeah, the engineers have been all over that, so.
I'm assuming at this point that town, you, whoever has already provided your relevant feedback
Correct.
to them. So we're basically trusting in the conversations that you all
Yes.
have already had that.
Yes.
Okay.
I've worked closely with you, Kevin, and
Okay.
So-
they're the ones who gave me the information.
Yeah, I figured, because when you were saying we've already met, I was like, no, we didn't, but
Yeah.
assuming that those conversations have.
Yes.
But there still has some way to go. I mean, this is not the
Just,
end.
yeah, it's
This is
the
just the
draft.
process.
The draft,
Draft,
which
yeah.
we know is
Correct,
gonna
yeah.
come back to the county
Right.
anyway.
Yeah, when did we met? February, March, maybe?
We met multiple times.
Yeah, and that was the first time, and then it went back and forth a few times, got some things
Well,
on.
even before you came on as town administrator,
Ah.
we met multiple times, because we've been doing this since January 2023, and that doesn't include having to write the RFP and get the consultant on board time before that.
You know what, I do remember
We've been
that
doing
now.
this for
We
3
met
years.
out here, I think, yeah. Okay. Yeah,
what
so
we
we're
need-
fine.
That's good. Just wanted to.
Yeah.
So what we
And it
need,
matters to me, because I live here too.
Yeah, of course.
Ah, good point. You live, are you in the service area?
I'm in the town.
which is a good thing, right?
Like I said, it matters to me what goes in there.
So I guess we need someone to make a motion to approve this draft to move forward. Is that what you're requiring?
Basically, make a motion to approve to send the draft to the state for their required 60-day review.
And you guys are there and ready for us to say that.
Can I have a motion,
As long as
please?
you guys are, yeah. if you
Yeah,
know.
I think it's, this was really interesting. This was excellent. And,
Oh, well, I'm
and
glad
reading
you
that.
thought so, 'cause most people are falling asleep.
No, I think, actually, because I think of both living with a well and septic system for many years, and knowing that when I had the well, because of the farming that went on next to my property, and learning in the early 70s about how deadly and dangerous contaminants are to drinking water and to things that grow. When the farming stopped and the homes got built, all the trees and shrubs we planted that were dying, it suddenly exploded in growth. It was actually a miracle to see that. And then there was fear for years of drinking the well water, worried about the contaminants as a result of all of that. Times have changed, and in some respects, some of the things you've shown, times have not changed. There's still some scary things out there. But I think what we need is so I really understand the process. And I'm much happier drinking our town water, by the way, than I am where I was in the 70s. So can we have someone please then make a motion for the draft to move forward?
Make
For
a
the
motion
county.
for the county to send the draft to the state for the required 60-day review.
And may we have a second?
I second it.
And any other discussion? Then all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Brenda.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, Carroll County Department of Planning update.
Andrew, it's a tough act to follow, man.
Yeah.
No PowerPoint?
No PowerPoint. I am so sorry for that. Just a couple quick updates. The Board of County Commissioners on July 31st will be conducting a public hearing for the spring 2025 amendment to the 2023 Water and Sewer Master Plan, including what this body approved a couple months ago, the amendments to the Hampstead water sewer service area. Also, text amendments include topics such as the employment campus district, adequate public facilities, and solar development requirements. For master plan update, as I mentioned many times, the 3 work groups of economy that Jim is on, agriculture and housing they're getting close to finishing up. Also, planning staff will be attending farmers markets throughout the county to help promote the master plan process, with Hampstead being one of those. And that is all I have.
Okay. Any questions, anyone? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much, as always. Is there any other business on the table? Any public comment? Then with no other business and any other public comment, I need a motion then to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
May I have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
So adjourned. Thank you for your attention.